So, with the announcement of the WBD deal, AEW is safe on our screens at least for another 3 years, although let's be honest, it should be a lot longer than that. Now, that said, hopefully with this new project and with the streaming service, AEW can begin to branch out a little more in making new things. Now, for fans of a certain age, you may remember this back when you were in middle school, high school, maybe even elementary school. WWE used to make documentaries every single month, a special DVD collection set with matches from a certain wrestler plus like a small biopic, right? It'd be like an hour 20 or so, but it was entertaining. There was, trying to remember off the top of my head, Latino Heat, the Eddie Guerrero story. There was Shawn Michaels. There was Triple H, the King of Kings, John Cena, My Life. There was, God, there's so many of them. They were even used as propaganda pieces. For example, like the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. They were, not so fun fact, they were actually going to do one called the self-destruction of Bret Hart until Bret Hart agreed to work with him in exchange for using photos in his book. It was a bigger thing. But the fact of the matter is that WWE used to do this a lot, which helped to immortalize certain moments and certain things and certain wrestlers. So that said, AEW is now 5 years old. They're not a new company anymore. They're very much established and, for all intents and purposes, will outlive WCW, at the very least Nitro. So that said, why don't we dive into 10 documentaries we kind of hope AEW will make in the near future that we can hopefully see on Max. Now, before we dive into the actual top 10, there's a few I want to mention that I feel like maybe are too new for documentaries. One would be on the Four Pillars. Reason being is because we just had the Four Pillars match last year, and I feel like there hasn't been enough time since that match to kind of warrant a rematch, part 2, or at the very least to dive into all the characters at where they've been. Maybe once all four men have held all the world championships, maybe that. Also on that list is Swerve vs. Hangman, an incredible rivalry. Not going to question it. If you want to see a good documentary on that rivalry, go to Dropkick Wrestling. Their YouTube channel is amazing. But I feel like it's not over yet. And maybe it'll never be over. But 4 matches, an amazing rivalry. Great, but I feel like maybe it's still too recent. Maybe. Last of the honorable mentions is Toni Storm, The Resurgence. Reason being is because I feel like she was just announced as the PWG #1 women's wrestler of 2024. It just happened. I kind of feel like I want a little bit of time. I want her. She rose, held the title, kept it for a while, lost it to Maria May, and now I want that pickup again with Toni Storm. Amazing wrestler, amazing talents, incredible person, all things considered, great promo. I want to see her buck back up again. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be the perfect time to do the documentary. That said, let's talk about 10 AEW documentaries we need to see. Orange Cassidy and the Run of a Lifetime. Now, while the International Championship may only be 2 years old, there's already one signature run for that title that people still talk about to this very day. Yeah, only 2 years old. But that would be the run of one Orange Cassidy and his title defenses. Now, the great thing about this would be not just how it's a character evolution, but how it really establishes the title as it means something. The fact that Orange Cassidy held the title for over 300 days means something. The fact that he defended it against anyone and everyone means something. But also the fact that with each title defense, his body got worn down more and more means something. There's also something to be said about the fact that it did change his character. Orange Cassidy was known to be a guy that didn't care about anything, but then he started to care and started to try, and it made him an even better wrestler. And he lost the title not because of carelessness, but because his body was so broken down he couldn't defeat one Jon Moxley. Number 9, Eddie Kingston arrives. Eddie Kingston is a man who should have never made it in professional wrestling, but against all odds, he did, and then some, and he grew. So, not so fun fact story. During the pandemic, Eddie Kingston was ready to give up professional wrestling. He was even looking to sell his in-ring gear when he got the phone call to do a match on Dynamite with one Cody Rhodes. That one match led to an AEW contract and the growth, the explosion of one Eddie Kingston, a man whose promo can deafen and silence people. Eddie Kingston speaks, you listen. He speaks poetry. Go watch that promo that he did with Jon Moxley leading into their match for the AEW World Championship. At one point he says, and I quote because I can't say it as well as he does, although, editor, if you can find the clip, please play the clip instead of my voice.
And I'm going to take that championship. I'm going to hand it to my mother. And I'm going to tell her, Ma, the reason why you don't have a grandchild is because of this. The reason why I didn't give you a daughter-in-law is because of this. Because this is all that matters in our sport.
That is masterful work from a man who knows how to spit poetry. Eddie Kingston, very much going from undesirable to, I'm not going to use the Cody Rhodes quote, to holding 3 separate championships from major companies all at the same time. It's definitely a story worth telling. Number 8, Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker. As of October 2024, this may be the best women's rivalry AEW has ever had. Maybe. Now, the best rivalries don't put one person over, but instead elevate both talent, and it's very clear to see this rivalry did just that, at least for a short period of time. Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa had insane chemistry with each other, not just in the ring, but on the mic as well. Their promos that they cut were borderline dangerous with each other, almost blurring the lines a bit, and their matches only got better with each section, with each time. Particularly, I'm a bigger fan of their St. Patrick's Day Slam Lights Out match, but if you like their cage match where Thunder Rosa won the title, I can understand that. But this rivalry deserves to be immortalized, especially with the fact that Thunder Rosa is back and Britt Baker is technically back. I kind of hope they, run it back, or hell, maybe make them a tag team and a rough shot. We never know. But yeah, I like this one. I think this documentary would work. This rivalry was... epic is a word that's too used, but it was ugly and personal. And I mean, just look at this image, right? This image speaks volumes. This image speaks more than I ever could. Number 7, MJF's ascension. I'll be honest, I was not an MJF guy. I was not an MJF fan until he cut that promo, and we will get to that in a moment. Now, first of all, if we go back to All In way back in 2018, MJF was opening the show. He was jerking the curtain, but he was losing to one Mr. Matt Cross. And no offense, Mr. Cross, but fast forward 5 years and MJF is headlining the biggest wrestling show in the history of Europe at Wembley Stadium in front of over 80,000 people. Don't at me. The rise of this incredible wrestler should be immortalized, and they should show off his rivalry between him and Cody Rhodes, him and Y2J, him and he who should not be named. Fine, I'll say his name. Glassbones Punk. They should show his rivalry and those promos. Again, more masterful work from a young man who, frankly, is only getting better in the ring. And that's fucking terrifying. They should include his title win over Jon Moxley, his run with Adam Cole on the Brochachos, and yes, his return, his rise up of Daniel Garcia, and his MJF, his US title run. It's just great all the way around. And he's only going to continue to get better. He's only going to become a bigger star going forward. And he deserves to be AEW. I think either the highest paid AEW wrestler or the second highest paid. I don't know if it's him or Y2J. But either way, MJF definitely deserves this documentary for how far he's come. Number 6, Hangman's Redemption. From MJF's ascension to Hangman's redemption.
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
Well, his first redemption at least. When we first were introduced to Hangman Adam Page, he was almost established as a made man. He challenged Y2J for the world title at the first big pay-per-view in the history of the company. Now, that said, he did lose, but there's nothing wrong about losing to the biggest guy in the company. It makes sense. But what happened afterwards spoke volumes. He broke his intensity, his confidence. He slowly began to go down a dark rabbit hole. A millennial, a young cowboy. What does it mean to be a good man? What does it mean to do cowboy shit and being tough? We saw moments of him and his clarity, but also how broken he was, searching for friends, trying to find himself, trying to figure stuff out. His rivalry with Kenny Omega was amazing, but his world title win was also an emotional climax to AEW. Arguably, their maybe second biggest milestone up until that moment. Like, Kenny Omega winning the title was a big deal, so was Jon Moxley. But Hangman Adam Page, the first true homegrown AEW talent winning that title, just amazing. Chef's kiss all around. And speaking of Kenny Omega, we have Kenny Omega, the belt collector, number 5. When AEW was first founded, there was an initial fear that the Elite would book themselves to be world champions immediately. That said, the first year, 2 years or so, they didn't do that exactly. Granted, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page were mixed up very much in the tag team gold division along with the Young Bucks, while Cody was trying to put over young new stars and establish a new title in the TNT Championship. Kenny lost a lot, and it was not until the tournament that we finally got to see how Kenny Omega could, to be frank, go off. He eventually defeated Jon Moxley at Winter is Coming. I believe Sting also debuted that night, but Kenny Omega won, and then ran off with the championship with Don Callis to TNA. I'm sorry, Impact Wrestling at the time. And then we had the Belt Collector, and oh man, that run was amazing. And it's even crazier when you go back and realize Kenny Omega was dealing with multiple injuries, including vertigo at the time. The world's greatest wrestler, ladies and gentlemen. That deserves to be immortalized, and hopefully there's an agreement between AEW, Impact, and AAA where they can use footage, because to see him roll over not one, not two, but 3 companies at the same time, amazing. Is he the first man to do a Belt Collector gimmick? No. But did he succeed in making us all hate him and want to see him lose his championships? Definitely yes. And Kenny, we miss you dearly. Number 4, the age of the tag teams. So there's a lot to cover in this one, particularly between the Young Bucks, FTR, and the very soon leaving Lucha Brothers, which, how did they not do a TLC match with those 3 teams? Just that would have blown everything out of the water. Anyway, I'm sorry. That said, AEW, definitely one of its core strengths in its early years up until recently was its tag team division. By far, they had the best tag team division in the world, and it wasn't even close. So many over teams, so many great possibilities, combinations. But again, it's centered around these 3 teams, and I believe a documentary talking about the rivalry between all of them would be great. Brothers versus brothers, the ladder match and the cage match, amazing. FTR versus the Briscoes, amazing. Go back and run back the Young Bucks versus FTR in the rivalry, and how it didn't have the strongest build the first time around, but it only got better the longer they went. There's so much that they can cover with this, so many people. Again, they easily had the best tag team division on the planet by far, reigniting it so much so, I would argue WWE is still playing catch up to this day. I mean, other than the Usos, who do they got that's like all-time tag team wrestlers right now? I'm just saying. Number 3, Sting's final run. I think Wrestle Talk said it best. Sting's final run with AEW was treated with dignity, grace, and respect. Granted, it's a little disappointing that he pretty much lived in the tag team division with Darby Allin, but they worked around his limitations. He was in his 60s, and he had a great run with AEW, winning his final match on the way out. A match that he didn't even want to win, but that TK and other guys had to campaign for him. I understand the whole old adage of going out on your back, but Sting, you're too much of a legend to go out that way, especially with those disappointing years in WWE. You deserved more. And I think capturing this entire run would be great, showing him wrestling in other parts of the world as well, and those tag team matches. In particular, the tag team match where it was him, Darby Allin, and Adam Copeland just fucking looked amazing. But yeah, I believe encapsulating this run would work wonders for AEW. Number 2, Jon Moxley. While it's clear that there have been a number of big names to walk through the halls of AEW, I would argue maybe the most important might be Jon Moxley. While Y2J did help establish AEW, help get them mainstream publicity, help get them the Dynamite TV deal that would foster the company, Moxley carried them through the pandemic era. Moxley carried them in front of no crowds, doing his best to protect the company. And on multiple occasions, he has been called upon as a break glass in case of emergency, get Mox. When it came to the CM Punk glass bone injuries, when it came down to MJF having issues or having to put MJF over as the champion, Moxley did the deed without question. He was set for a 6-week well-earned vacation when TK had to break glass and get him in there to help stabilize the championship title picture, which, by the way, this should look familiar. Just saying. That said, Jon Moxley is a very important figure, even right now, as he's becoming a heel. And quick prediction here. I'm willing to bet that Jon Moxley is a bad guy to try and surcharge and force the other AEW wrestlers, the mid-carders, guys like Darby Allin, guys like Daniel Garcia, guys like Hook, guys like Orange Cassidy, and force them into the main event spotlight. Because Bryan Danielson is gone now. Sting's gone. We need new blood. We need new main eventers. It's time to step up or get stepped on. I think that's his end game. But anyway, that said, Jon Moxley deserves a documentary in his own right. Also, just a bit of a side note, if they're willing to, dive into his history with addiction issues and checking himself into rehab. That takes balls. That takes courage. I respect that. I believe the number one documentary that they should make, especially after the new WBD deal, should be about AEW Dynamite Year 1. Establishing the deal, announcing it. The very first Dynamite, the first big show, establishing their home at Daly's place in the pandemic era, and so much more that was happening. And yes, have in-depth interviews from everyone, including one, Cody Rhodes. Now, I'm willing to bet WWE won't let him play ball and do an interview, but I'm willing to bet AEW has access to old interviews, old archive footage that they can use for Cody for this documentary. Go in depth with everyone about what a risk and gamble this was, especially going into the pandemic and how they came out the other side strong. I think we've earned a documentary about this story of AEW, especially the first year, and deserves to be immortalized. That said, what's some topics you want to see covered in an AEW documentary? Also, do you prefer this list format? I don't think we can do it every single week. Maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. That might be pushing it, depending on my editor, Jerry. Jerry, how many of these can you put out a month? Disappointing, I see. Anyway, that said, that was mean. That said, yeah, please like and subscribe. Greatly appreciated. Obviously, we are a growing channel. Those numbers are disgraceful. And yeah, catch y'all next time. See everybody.